you kind of lost me at data transfer. I don't know what's going on.
FTP, file transfer protocol.
Now, what we have to remember is that not every position can be changed to every other position.
And making sure that the users we have now stay happy and stay on while trying to attract some other people to play it.
They make
Hustle home, but yeah. No, that's over in a heartbeat. Ain't got any problem with that.
Those guys do they crack me up. I gotta admit that it cracks me up looking at some of those and I guess that's why the intros are so funny to me, is because I've had an opportunity to go back when I'm making those and look at some of the funnier shows, or the ones that really stood out for one reason or the other. Anyway, I'm your host, Majique. This is TTATO. It's a regular about twice a month effort that we put forth for the Gridiron Dynasty community on the What If Sports platform. For those of you who aren't familiar with the show, we basically just try to interact with the other humans that are on the platform from time to time, and also share some knowledge or tidbits of wisdom, sometimes even secrets, to help others learn how to play the game or maybe improve the way they're playing. Tonight, we're going to actually have an opportunity to look at the TTATO Fantasy Football League that we have going on the Yahoo platform. It's not affiliated with What If Sports whatsoever. It's just something that we've done to kind of broaden our sociability, if you will, with one another, and enjoy each other's camaraderie and talk some smack on that. So we'll be going over that as well, and also an update announcement of sorts regarding What If Sports Gridiron Dynasty. So we'll get into that too. No guests scheduled for today. However, as always, anybody that wants to join the show can just pop on in and join. And we do have some folks in the green room, as we call it, backstage, and we'll get to them as well. Real quick, did want to mention that we will be having a show after Thanksgiving. So in 2 weeks, on that Thursday night, there will be a show. And with that in mind, do wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving and a very Merry Christmas, and a festive celebration for whatever it is you choose to celebrate during this time of year at this holiday season. Looking forward to seeing what Santa Claus brings this year. So we'll see how that works out for everybody, with COVID dying down and people being able to get out and actually do some hands-on shopping. All right, well, let's go ahead and get going with the show. First and foremost, we'll want to bring on John, see if John's ready to talk with us a bit. There he is. How you doing, John?
Hey, what's going on? Actually, real first name is Rod.
Ron John.
Rod, R-O-D. Last name is Johnson. So.
Okay. Rod Johnson?
Yeah, that's where the John comes from.
See, there you go. We can start over if you want. Welcome to the show, Rod.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Thanks. I appreciate it.
So how are you doing with your teams?
I'm doing okay. I started 3-4 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. It was probably right around the time COVID kind of hit, and started with one and worked my way up to Division I in Rockney, and then kind of felt like I had a national championship in me at the Division III level, so got into another world, into Leahy, and I'm still trying to get that championship there. And then picked up a third in Yoast, where I'm just playing around and trying like wishbone and trying to run like all wishbone and all nickel, and and see how that works out. So I feel like I'm one of those guys that's on the verge of being good, but still got to pick up a couple more tips here and there.
Yeah, and usually it's not necessarily one thing that really takes you over the top. It's usually a summary of a couple little things, some little tweaks here and there, a game plan adjustment or a playbook adjustment, or varying your recruiting targets. Sometimes it's luck, for lack of a better explanation.
Yeah. I mean, I've made a couple of decent runs. My Kent State team is back-to-back Sugar Bowls, so I've been good, but I don't think they're going to win a national championship. That's a little dreamy, but and then my team in Leahy has been to the national semis back-to-back years. So getting close, but there's other monsters out there like St. Olaf that I don't know about beating them.
Well, Rod, you look like you're a guy from Ohio, based on.
That's where I grew up. I live in Virginia now, but I grew up.
Where at Virginia?
I grew up in Ohio. Yeah, I live in Suffolk, out in near Virginia Beach.
Yeah, I'm originally from Virginia. Well, originally from Germany, but grew up in Virginia, out in Lunenburg County.
Yeah, I think I exchanged a couple of site mails with you early, like, hey, got a couple of tips, and you helped me out a little bit. So,
good.
And we talked a little bit of Virginia stuff.
Yeah, so that was
born and bred Ohio.
Yeah. So, is your goal then to eventually snag Ohio State at D1?
Yeah, it is, and I
Imagine
applied
that.
for it. I applied for it 2 seasons ago, and got beat out by the guy who was at Miami. And then I thought, well, I'll get some elite experience, and I tried to get Miami and got beat out by the guy who was from Clemson. And I thought, well, I don't really want to take over Clemson. I'm happy at Kent State, so I'll stick around here and see if Ohio State pops up ever. But
yeah, and if you're looking at getting into an elite, there are times when a couple conference championships at a non-Power 5 school can make it happen for you. You can rack up enough wins, rack up enough conference championships, especially those bowl games, and make yourself a juicy target for one of the elite schools. Definitely.
Yeah, and I think both guys that beat me for the jobs had better resumes, so it wasn't a sour grapes thing. It was just, still got to pay my dues a little bit probably. And I just put a post up on the board because my last recruiting cycle with Kent went okay, but at the end I got picked off. Wisconsin picked off a couple of guys, and Michigan picked off a guy, and really left me scrambling with defensive backs. And so I just kind of said, like, man, I got to figure out a little bit more of that Kent State recruiting, and probably got frustrated to the point where I was like, I just need to get out of that mid-major and get into at least a Power 5.
It can be aggravating, for lack of a better term, when you think you've got everything sewed up and you're looking at a very promising class, and you're really pleased with the effort, the guys that you've targeted, the guys that are green, and then
yeah, I do a pretty good job of, like, I've been pretty good at staying away from those guys early, because when you're at Kent State, you've got Michigan and Ohio State and Notre Dame, and Penn State can come over, and there's a good guy recruiting at West Virginia. There's another good guy at Cincinnati. So it's a tough area. I've been okay, and I think I got a little greedy because I had a couple of good seasons, and so I was like, well, I'll reach a little higher this time, and was doing great until that last couple of, I think it was a day or two before signing day, and all of a sudden I just saw I needed 3 defensive backs, and I saw Michigan took one and Wisconsin took the other 2, and it was just, I ended up getting some guys, but now I'll just have to struggle through them.
Yeah, I've been involved in many recruiting discussions where the class was super great, everybody was happy, and then that word pops in. That's the common thread, until. Everything was going great until. Everything was fine until. So,
and it's probably mostly my fault. I just probably got a little greedy, and I usually tried to stay within 180, and I tried to get out to 360 a little bit, and I probably got into Wisconsin's territory, or at least close enough that he wasn't going to have it. So,
at least you're making them fight. That's the good thing. You're not getting it easy.
Yeah, it's coming along. It's coming along, and I got a couple guys that I've asked for some extra tips and see what different theories are out there, and you find out stuff that you hadn't heard before, and so that's always kind of makes you readjust a little bit.
Well, we know that you're from Ohio and living in Virginia. What else do we need to know about you as far as like how you found What If Sports, what do you do for fun when you're not doing Gridiron Dynasty? What do you do? That type, anything you're willing to share.
Well, I mean, I grew up doing a lot of like Stratomatic and stuff like that, which I imagine, yeah, I imagine there's a good portion of guys that, you know, just dug into stats and stuff like that. And I had played What If like a long, long time ago, like really early when it had started. And then I had just gotten out of it. And when COVID came around, I had more free time. And so I dove back into it. I coach high school football.
Awesome.
Ironically, I'm an offensive coordinator, but I think my defenses in What If have been better than my offenses, which is it's frustrating. But it's also, I tell my head coach, like, hey, give me the reins a little bit. We'll see how this defense goes. I think you and I are probably going to run into each other at some point. I'm a contractor supporting the FAA.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I think we may end up, you know, running into each other at some point somewhere. Who knows?
Well, I just recently took a job with still with the FAA, but I'm no longer part of the office here at Little Rock. I'm now 100% telework, and I work on the drone program there out of headquarters, Washington. So,
all right, yeah, I'm with Flight Standards.
Yep, I'm part of Flight Standards out of working AFS 830 or 800. And
okay. I'm with AFB 150.
There you go. Yeah, we'll run into each other. Absolutely. Matter of fact, my new supervisor, we were just mentioning kind of like what I was doing with you. You know, what other things do you do for fun? That question posed to me was, what do you do for fun that doesn't involve the FAA? And you know, I'd mentioned What If Sports, and he said, yeah, he played a while back and is thinking about getting back into it. So, you know, it's a small world out there when you're a sports enthusiast, and then you've got a platform like this that has no geographical boundaries. You know, we've got people in Australia, people in England, Saudi Arabia, all over the place. And it's really cool when, you know, you talk to some of the folks that aren't in the U.S. and you understand where they are because you've been there. You know, you can relate when they start referring to things. So it's a small world, but that's cool. Yeah, I'm sure we'll run across one another.
Yeah, I would think so.
If nothing else, it'll be paperwork.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, but I mean, it's an awesome game. It's one of those things that there's so much to figure out that you know, you figure out one thing and that causes another problem, and you got to get through that. It's pretty good. So.
Yeah, a couple friends of mine had talked about possibly joining. And I even pitched the idea with them. I said to kind of lessen that learning curve. You know, once you're out of D3, it gets really steep really fast, but it's much more enjoyable in my opinion. I offered them, I said, why don't you come and, you know, one of you guys, I'll have a team that is just for us, and one of you do defense, one of you do offense, and then we'll switch out and one of you do recruiting or whatever, so you can get a handle and focus on just that stuff whenever you have a chance. So we'll see how it goes, but I recommend that approach to a lot of guys that, you know, want to get involved in the game, maybe as, you know, father or son, or, you know, brothers or family members, whatever. Just spend that $10, get you one team, and, you know, work the various aspects and then broaden out from there. That's for sure.
That jump into D2 is really surprising. Even as much as you think you're prepared for it, the first time you just open up the playbook and you're like, wait a second, why does it look like this? And there's so much more to it. And that's when you start, like, it just clicks in your head, like, oh, now I'm playing a game.
Yeah, exactly. And now you are the coach versus, you know, D3, you're almost like a spectator or a suggester. You know, you can suggest what you want to do, but it's not going to happen the way you suggest, because there's only so much that you can actually have an impact on to the degree that you'd like. And if you're like me, where you really want to get down to the nuts and bolts and make things work, D2, that's when you really get into it. And I always recommend everybody get the hell out of D3.
I like Well, I mean, I have two D3 teams now, but one is just completely experimental where I'm just trying different things and seeing how they work. And then the other one is just that quest of when I originally had left D3, I think my team was in like a top 5 team, but hadn't won a championship. But I knew I wanted to get to D1. So then I was like, well, I'm going to get a second world D3 where I'm just going to stick with it until I can just, get close enough and win one that I'll feel like, okay, because I felt like if I stayed in D3, I had a shot, but I really wanted to get to D1, and I think now I really kind of just want to get into, eventually I'm going to find my way into one of those all human conferences because that's really, really interesting to me.
And it gets bloody, not just during the game, but especially in recruiting. If you get a conference that is, like the LSC in Division II, where it's centrally located around Texas. Holdaway and I were in a conference years ago, and he was at Angelo State, and I think I was at Commerce or Tarleton or something, and several other guys were in there, and the recruiting is just it was so bad that no one would enter Texas for recruits because we were on all of them,
Right.
We were battling for guys that we wouldn't even look at normally. Just a pride thing,
Yeah. I think I'm definitely like I don't really worry about Sims too much anymore. I've got them beat, and I think I hold my own against most humans. I do okay. I'm certainly not, but there's still there's those monsters out there that you look at and you're just like, man, this guy's winning 90% of his games. He's got something figured out, and you always want to chase down one or two of them.
Yeah, definitely. And I've had, the bug every now and then to get a D3 team and stick with it and recruit, top-notch guys and just let talent ride me to a championship. But after about 2 or 3 seasons, I'm like, man, I can't do this anymore. I'm so accustomed to, the full control that I get aggravated reading the play-by-play and going, why did this happen? This is not supposed to happen.
I think I changed my mindset on those and just try to like treat it as a mystery of like, hey, what's going to happen? We just started
roll the dice, baby.
we just started the playoffs in Leahy, and I had a pretty good first round, but then I looked at the next 3 guys and I was like, these next 3 games are toss-ups, and I can't wait to get up tomorrow to read like, let's see how it went. So I mean,
you close your eyes and hope for the best sometimes.
That's
all you
the
can
worst
do.
one, the parts you have to get over in D3 is when you see something that's a mistake, you have to go like, I can't fix that. There's no way to fix it, unless I just decide I'm going to run every third down or I'm going to pass every third down or whatever. I mean, you just have to live with that. So it's a talent accumulation game.
It is at that level. It truly is, especially when you've got a history of conference championships, deep playoff runs, national championships. Your vision at D3 in that scenario, in my opinion, is much larger over the also rans than a similar program at D2. D2 vision is not necessarily as large over the also rans in D2 than what you see at D3. It's just you look at some of the continual playoff teams at D3 and the also rans, and the disparity in talent is just wow.
I have
it is a D2 team at D3.
The powerhouse D3 team I have, recruiting is really easy. I mean, there's not a whole bunch of guys. I'm in a pretty good area. There's 1 or 2 other guys in Ohio. So I end up kind of pick these 15 guys, and I'm going to get 12 of them in the first round and then a couple of battles. My other D3 team, I'm only in like year 3 or 4. And it's just amazing when you're like, where are all the undecideds? Why can't I see any of those guys yet? I mean, it's so
exactly.
It's so but
and that was that post that was on the forum today. About I don't know if you read it yet, but there was a post about and I can't remember, forgive me, who made the post, but it was essentially saying, I can't see any undecideds. I'm looking at a select position, and my gosh, they're all taken except for one or two, and that is a vision.
I ended up replying to that because I'm in that
Okay.
That team that he took over and the team that I have won the same amount of games in the last 3 years. So our vision is about the same. And
Right.
when the cycle popped up the other night, I looked and I was like, man, I'm still not seeing any undecided. Like there's a couple undecideds, but there wasn't very many.
Yeah.
And I need one more good season to kind of make that leap a little bit.
That or a CC. I've noticed that winning a conference championship really does some good for your vision too, even if the prior season wasn't all that great. I don't know just how much. I haven't figured that out, but I noticed, for instance, at Humboldt, where had taken over a team, and gosh, my brain is bad, but it was being reworked, and then about 3 years in the rebuild process, I was able to get it. And you had somebody in conference that was whipping my butt every year, so I never got that CC. But once I got the CC, I noticed a big difference in vision. And it was just the accumulation of wins. It was, in my opinion, it was in fact that conference championship that really put me over the top. I'm not all the way there yet, but it was a lot better.
My one conference, I'm the champ every year, but I'm the only person in it. And then the other D3 team, I'm still 2 years away from competing. I'm in the other side of the standings where I'm going to make the conference championship game, but I'm going to lose it by 30, and so I just got to keep building until I can challenge at least a little bit.
Now, do you have anything in particular that you look for when you're wanting to take over a team, or you've got that itch to move up to the next level? Is there a region or a particular team or an offense?
So
what do you look for?
I think I've gone a couple different ways. My first move up to D2, I just ended up like, I'm going to take a team that's already pretty good. And it was a little bit of a shock because I took over Central Missouri State, and I hadn't recruited in an area where there's not like a lot of guys.
Right.
And so I was used to having guys within my 180 that I could find. And I got there and I was like, I need to change the way I recruit a little bit. So it was a good learning experience, and then my D1 AA team, I think I took over like Howard, but I knew I was only going to stay there for like a year. So I took a good team and ran with it. And then I got to Kent because it's where I graduated. So I wanted that. I like Ohio just because it's kind of where I grew up, but that experience at Central Missouri State kind of was interesting to me because it taught me like, it can be a little different when you start getting into some other areas, and it forced me to really think about recruiting a little bit differently and just be a little bit more patient and try to figure out where you could strike at 500 miles. Where you kind of had to wait to see like, okay, I got to see if this guy's going to get here and stuff like that. So the recruiting's really, to me, it's more than 50% of the game. It's closer to 60, 70, 80. Like you got to be able to figure that out. And the times where I have, it's been great. The times where I haven't, you see it 2 years down the road, where you got a team that's got 10 or 15 guys that are in the top 25 and you're making a good run and everything's good. And then the next year you're like, wait, I only got about 4 guys in the top 25. It's a little bit harder of a season, and you hope you scheduled right and things like that. So it's nice to be able to recruit once or twice, but if you can't do it every year, I think you're going to ride a roller coaster for a little bit until you get to a point where, and that's the hardest thing for me is the patience in recruiting has been the hardest thing.
Exactly. And this game, the analogy that was used a couple of years ago is like baking a cake. Gridiron Dynasty is no different than baking a cake.
Yeah.
When you go to the store to buy your ingredients for that cake, that's your recruiting. You're getting all those pieces and you're bringing them home. And then the way you make the recipe for the cake, and when you add what, that's your playbook. You're getting all the measurements right and all that set up. And then your game plan is how you bring it all together. And then, baking it and cooking it is how long you leave certain guys in that position before you give them a breather and bring in some of your subs and all. So, I don't see why more women aren't playing it. Was that wrong? Did I just say something wrong?
I don't think so. Listen, they probably bake better cakes than I can.
I'm telling you, there's some women on Gridiron Dynasty. I'd love to have them on this show because I don't know that I have a winning record against any of them.
Oh, really?
I mean, and that's I'm being sincere.
Wow.
And there's a couple. They know who I'm talking about. They see me on the schedule. They go out and do something else that night. They don't even need the game plan. They've got my number. I don't know what it is. And speaking of which, do you run your teams the same way, or do you use kind of a different strategy based on the team as it is?
Well, offensively, no. I have one runs trips. Like I only run one offense per whatever team I'm on. They're only running one offense. I think that formation IQ is such a big deal that I may play around with two in some instances, but now I run trips in one world, I run pro in another, and then I run wishbone in the third.
Okay.
Defense, I'm playing around with nickel in that experiment team, but I'm a 3-4 guy. I just
same here.
I think the ability to either have 3 or 4 or 5 guys at the line of scrimmage or more, that's invaluable to me. Like the idea that I can take one defense and really, I can just stack the line and be like, okay, you're going to see 5 guys at the line of scrimmage, or I can have everybody back and you're going to see 3 guys. Now, having said all that, your outside linebacker's got to be pretty good.
Yeah.
You gotta find 2 guys that can do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, those are the ones that when you look at specialization, like some people have said, do you want your cornerbacks to be better tacklers than they are speeders, or do you want your DBs that are your safeties to have more speed, or do you want them to be better tacklers? And again, it all depends on the formation and with the talent around you. And so that's what's interesting with me is I can run the same defense with generally the same type of quality players at those positions, and I'll make one change by putting a speedier guy at a certain position, and I'll notice that defense over a certain amount of games either performs better or worse, given similar talent competition as one of my other teams. And I have to make a note. Oh, when you put this type guy here, it all goes to hell in a handbasket. And if you put this guy here, it gets good.
Let me ask you this: on a 3-4, what you're on the defensive line? Do you have kind of a theory worked out on that?
Yeah, I like to look for 2 really good, solid tacklers that have good technique, strong tackling ability. And those are the guys that I generally use on my inside. And the reason I want 2 on that 3-4 setup like that is because I'll run them at like 95% if they're very similar in core, and just rotate them in and out. And I look for a bit of a pass rushing type on the outsides of the 3-4, my defensive end, if you will, a little more speed, because I'm thinking that that speed may help pressure the quarterback in passing situations, get in the backfield on some run plays, and maybe support the outside too because of that speed. But the game only allows you to see so much in the game by game or play by play that you really can't pinpoint that. But based on a defensive approach or a defensive philosophy, that's my thinking there. Linebackers wise, like you said, those outside linebackers have really got to be good because, who knows who they're going to be covering. It could be a receiver depending on the offense. It could be a tight end. It could be a running back. It all depends on the offensive scheme that's being thrown at you. And again, the distances. You know, are they in the box, or are they playing back? You know, do you have a cornerback coming up for support on a particular play? Are you blitzing him?
Right.
You know, a lot of people that I've talked to really recruit for the sub positions, and I don't mean substitute. I mean the more specialized positions. Instead of a linebacker, they're recruiting an outside linebacker, or they're recruiting an inside linebacker. And those two do not look alike when you look at paper. Same with the safeties. You know, you got your free safety, your strong safety. They don't look alike in some cases.
Right.
Same with an interior defensive lineman versus a defensive ends in the 3-4. Yeah.
I definitely do that.
Recruiting.
I definitely do that on the line of scrimmage. I haven't done it too much with my secondary, but on the line of scrimmage, I'm trying to get the biggest, fastest, strongest, toughest guy as the nose in that 3-4.
Yes.
And really try to just be like, whoever the best guy I can get there, I feel like that alone almost stops the run. You know, unless you get
it definitely goes a long way. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, unless you get a team that's really good at running the ball, you can a superstar kind of guy there. But it's always funny when you find one of those superstar linebackers. They're conference player of the year, national player of the year. I mean, I had a guy a couple of years ago. He was like outside linebacker, had like 13 interceptions, and it was just one of those things. Like it was just one of those amazing things where I knew he was good, you know. And I had left him in coverage most of the other time and blitzed the other guy, and he just kept picking everything off, and I was just like, wow, I guess okay. So if I find a guy that can do these things, you know, it pays off at that position. So, but I haven't done it in the secondary very much yet.
And that's something that I found with running backs too is, you know, you'll look at these guys on paper and they seem to be similar, but one of them may have just a bit technique or athleticism that's better than the other guy. And you look at their stats and you're like, there's no way that little bit can make up this difference.
I have that with my Kent State team. I've got 3 guys. Their guess ratings are all like within a point of each other. They're like 80, and 79. And their stats are wildly different.
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Now, do you ever play with using a tight end as your fullback in a position change?
I haven't tried it yet. I played around. I looked at it one year where I had read on the board about position changes, and I went through one of my teams and kind of looked, and I didn't see anything that made sense to me. So I didn't do it, and mostly because I don't really use a fullback as much as I just kind of get two running backs, and I count one as the speed guy and one as the power guy. The power guy will get the inside run, the speed guy will get the outside. So I haven't done a lot as far as how much I'm going to block with them. I probably end up throwing a little bit more out of pro than I should. But I was lucky. I ended up with a kid who was a great quarterback for a number of years. And so it got easier as I got into the harder games to be like, well, I know I can't run against these. You know, when you get – I schedule Ohio State every year. And you know, like, okay, I'm not going to be able to run against these guys, so let's throw it 57 times and see what happens. You know,
let's throw it to the center.
So one thing I haven't quite figured out yet is, like, how much really can I dedicate to being a really good running team? Because I've got guys, my trips teams, I've been pretty good with the run, but every time I get into the playoffs, it just seems like those running stats become really, really difficult to pack up. You know, so that's always – I'm still kind of a little bit afraid of when I get into the postseason, I probably ramp up the passing a little bit because I go, well, I just don't feel I'm going to be able to run against a lot of these teams. The better teams seem to be difficult to run.
Yeah, probably their defensive scheme, not necessarily their difference in talent. You know, they got their own talent and know-how. So it's probably that know-how that's making the difference in the success range.
Yeah, even teams that I've had that have been pretty good at running the ball, it's a pretty noticeable difference when you get to the postseason, deeper into the postseason, and that's at the D3 level though. Up at Kent State, I've been okay at kind of both, but I had a 4-year starter at quarterback, and I just ended up with like a very high guy that nobody else had looked at, and I lucked into him, and he had a great career.
Oh,
And by
wow.
the time he was a senior, I was there. I mean, he wasn't going to throw an interception against anybody in the country, so I had a shot with that guy. I had a really good shot.
Now, you mentioned having a power back and a speed back. Depending on your playbook, whether you're choosing to run inside or outside, some people will actually have a blended play in their playbook where they've got, 100% run, but it's 50% inside, 50% outside. And they'll have both their speed guy and their power guy in the backfield at the same time. On the flip side, others will have two separate plays in that playbook where it's outside and one play is inside, where they're showing 100% run but 0 inside, and they've got their speed guy in. And then on the other play, it's 100% run, 100% inside, and they've got their power guy in.
Yeah.
In those situations, are you using without giving away too much of your secret, the speed guy and power guy in the same backfield?
I usually I'll put a speed and a power together, and then I'll blend the play. And some years it's been 50-50 where I'll run them both inside and outside. And then other years when they're a little bit, because they end up being kind of close to each other anyway.
Right.
But if there's a bigger difference, then I'll start kind of separating that a little bit more. And I've gone to probably like an 80-20 setup where 80% of the inside runs are going to the power guy and 80% of the outside runs are going to the speed guy. Which probably makes me a little bit predictable, but I definitely am one of those guys that like I want my best guys to have the ball in the best situation they can, and I'll take my chances with that. So
I shared a site or exchanged a site mail conversation recently where that question came up about, are you wasting your power back if he's in when you've got an outside run play called? And what I've done in the past that I found to be really a good technique is in the playbook separate. I don't have any 50-50 plays. They're all either 100 or they're all 0. 0 inside, of course, is my outside play. 100% inside is my inside play. And the reason I saw that they were effective and what I shared with this gentleman was in those situations where I know I'm going to be running outside, my power guy inside is just a waste. He's not doing anything for me other than potentially his strength. And that's why I bring up the mention of having a tight end recruited as a fullback, simply because of those good strength numbers as well as blocking numbers that a tight end gives you as a junior or senior. He can then be your fullback and be in the game, whether it's an inside or outside run, and help you with that blocking criteria. And then your power guy is sitting on the bench on an outside run, getting his rest. And then on an inside play, your speed guy is sitting on the bench, and the power guy is in, getting the gut up the middle. And what that does is that's one of them situations where you get 4 running backs who all get starts, but you're running a pro set offense. You have 4 running backs get started, and that's why, because about 35% equates to a start based on the setup in the playbook or the roster. So if a guy gets 35% or more, he's seeing that as a start. So you're getting those starts, those additional starts, which then improve your work ethic. His cores are going up. Playing time. He's increasing his formation IQ. So that's just one of the little scenarios that I shared with that guy on.
That's pretty interesting. I end up having one guy also as a possession guy, and then I have a blowout guy. So I end up all of my backs. I'll have 4 backs, and they'll all have like 12 carries, which I'm sure probably frustrates whoever the best of them is.
Yeah.
But
And I'll do that too. Like you mentioned, the possession guys. It may be the speed guy that's got the best hands on the team.
Sometimes it is.
You know, in that situation where I'm passing to my running backs, I'll have the two pass catching running backs in the game, or I'll set it up to where only one of them's in the game and the fullback's back there blocking, especially if there's a lot of blitz packages coming. You know, if I see somebody that's doing a lot of blitzing, you know, I'll leave that fullback sitting back there to kind of help out with some of that blitz package that's being thrown at me. And, you know, I've got plenty of tight ends that are going in and out. And also another thing I shared with him in that situation was on the running plays. I don't have my best wide receivers in the game. Why? You know, they're just wasted being in there if they're not going out for a pass. That's when you get your freshman wide receivers. You know, when you're running inside or outside, throw those freshman wide receivers into that depth chart and into that playbook in the form.
Yeah, that's the same as my third string quarterback is handing the ball off.
Exactly. Yep. You've got an opportunity there to get some playing times, because that was the initial crux of the question was, how do I get more playing time out of my guys? The two exhibition games that the freshmen can get in, how do I get some of these freshmen in the game without just shooting myself in the foot?
And that's definitely something. I know it's on the boards quite a bit, and if you really dig for information, you'll find a lot of it. But that's something that newer players, and I'm certainly not far enough along. I don't even know how many seasons I have, but I'm certainly not far enough along to be a veteran yet. But I got 18 seasons in.
Oh yeah.
Or no, is that just in this league? Yeah, I think that's just in. I don't know how many total seasons I have yet, but one of the things that I would definitely say to a new player is, man, get guys as much playing time as you can and figure that out, because the growth of your players becomes a really big deal.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
well, you have talked about different things that you like to do. Are you a fantasy football enthusiast on the Yahoo platform by any chance?
34 seasons total. Sorry.
There you go. Yeah.
I have been in Yahoo fantasy football leagues. I'm currently in one with friends on CBS Sportsline because they allow you to write articles, and all of us either are or have been sports reporters. And so our trash talk is like legitimately writing game recap articles with fake quotes and stuff that are really a lot of fun. So I love fantasy football, but boy, it's the fight through injuries is just incredibly hard.
Yeah, that's the one thing. As a commissioner of some of the leagues I'm in, last year we increased the bench, we increased the injured reserve, so that, you know, because COVID, I mean, every other day somebody was being, you know, sent to the locker room for COVID. But let's go ahead and look at the Yahoo update and keep us in mind, because at the end of this season, you know, about August is when we pick up again. And I'm sure we're going to be rotating some coaches out. So I'll post a message on the board.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
So let's take a look at where we're at currently with it. Might help if I hit the right one, huh?
Well, we're about to enter into week 11. I think that kicks off tonight. So the season is well underway. And right now, Jumpin' Jehoshaphat, managed by yours truly in our league, is currently in first place. But that really doesn't paint a true picture. And here's why. If you look at, there's that Jumpin' Jehoshaphat's team. If you look at how the opponents have done in the points against, this is the lowest point total by opponents in matchups in the entire league. So I've been extremely lucky in having the people I play that particular week basically just have some horrible games for whatever reasons. And I don't anticipate that being the case going forward. So don't really expect to remain in first place much longer. If I finish the season in the top 10, I will be extremely happy. But looking at the layouts of the divisions, Belichick is being led by Bach Shiners, 7-3. On top in the Reed division, Bushwood Caddies, currently leading in Carroll. And Vinnie Mac is topping the Tomlin division. And if you look at this week's matchups, you've got number 1 against number 4. So 2 division leaders going at it in that one. And also a upper echelon battle. The underachievers, 5th place team, going against division leader in Belichick, Bach Shiner, who is currently 3rd. So some interesting matchups for this week. Let's go ahead and look at the players that are available on the waiver wire as we sit right here. There's not a whole lot of talent available for whatever reason. You know, deep benches in a 16-team league really don't leave a lot of talent in the waiver pool. Let's go ahead and look at who's been doing the scoring individual-wise this year. Cooper Kupp, 273 points, leads all players in points total for the season. Taylor, the running back, right behind him. Of course, Derrick Henry, off to a fantastic season, was injured, so he's out for the rest of the year, or he'd definitely still be at the top. But for the most part, you know, you're looking at some prominent names that tend to be in the upper echelon each and every season here recently. Well, that's a wrap-up for this week of the TTATO Fantasy Football League.
And there you have it. So we've got some good battles definitely from week to week. And as I said, we'll be rotating some coaches in and out. I'm sure of that because, you know, some guys just find they don't enjoy it. Others really do enjoy it. This particular game, Gridiron Dynasty, I don't see why somebody would leave. You know, it's just I left because the game started getting screwed up. But a lot of that has been fixed. A lot of that has gotten the attention that we've been craving from the What Is Sports staff. And, you know, I talked with Jordan earlier this week. There's a new update, I guess you can say, that's coming out. He hasn't provided any insight as to what that update is. I'm not sure how much of it he's comfortable revealing to me or to anyone else for that matter. But, you know, it was talked about a November timeframe, December timeframe when Adam was here as well. And that update, based on what Jordan said, is getting really close to being released. Now, is that tomorrow? Is that 2 weeks from now? Is that another month? Who knows? But hearing really close to, oh, it's something we're working on, you know, that's a bit exciting for me because I'm looking forward to it. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that it has something to do with the playoff and the bowl structure, because I'm one of those guys that would love to see a playoff incorporated into our D1 platform here at What Is Sports. What are your take on the division or the D1 playoffs here?
Yeah, I like the D1 playoffs just because, you know, occasionally some stuff happens. I was fortunate enough. I beat Ohio State last year just because I had a senior team and he was new coming in and he was probably changing up some ways things go. So I had lost to him, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years in a row. And I was getting a little closer, but I didn't harbor a lot of dreams of like, well, you know, you never know. And, you know, you just get one kind of upset. Plus, I just like the idea of more games, you know. So
yeah, exactly.
If you're, you know, that it's strange to be in D3 and make the playoffs and get those 4 or 5 extra games, and then in D1 your conference championship ends, and sometimes you're like, oh yeah, 4 days from now I have a game like that. You know, I've certainly been dumb enough to forget, like, oh, I'll change my entire offense for the bowl game and then not change it in the game plan or something. So
yeah,
I like to get up every day and do a half hour of whatever I'm doing and kind of get it going. And so I like the patterns of kind of everyday stuff.
Yeah, I think it was Charlie Seabrake I think it was he who said, the prize for doing real well at D1 is you have to wait after the conference championship to play again.
Yeah.
He said if you have a mediocre season, you get to play again. You get to turn the computer off and wait for the next year to start, and it doesn't work that way if you're playing in that last day of bowl games. You've got that break, and then you play a bowl game, and now you've got the break again where you're waiting for new coaches to sign and all that.
Yeah.
That I would.
Well, plus there's always that little bit of excitement of playing somebody who you've never played before, or
right.
You it's a name you've heard, and you're like, oh, let's see how it goes, and you get that little bit of surprise of who you're playing. And when you get a bowl game, sometimes, like I had a bowl game where I had a rematch with Ohio State one year, and I was like, well, I know how this is going to go. He beat me by 50, in the third week of the season. So I like more games the better, and it's just it's more information to help you figure out the puzzle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some of the other guys have argued the counter aspect. More bowl games gives elites more playing time for their players, which means their teams are even that much better than those guys that don't make the playoffs. So if you're going to have a playoff that's 3 or 4 games, you're really cutting the throat of those people that don't make the playoffs because they don't have the advantage of those additional games. Well, it's no different than at D2 or D3 or even D1 AA. You got playoffs there. You got 30-some teams, but at D1A, you're not going to have 30 teams in the playoff. I wouldn't assume, but you never know. You got bowl games that maybe they'll have a bowl game, but there again, you're only playing one game if you're not in the playoff, so to speak. So,
and if they want to set it up where it's an 8-team playoff or something like that, like maybe what college football is going to do, that's still cool with me. I'd rather just see kind of 32 teams get in and let them play out. I like it to mirror real world football as much as possible, but as you're coming up through 3-2-1 or 3-2 and 1A, and you get all those playoffs, when you get to 1A, it's kind of a letdown of like, oh, I don't have those playoffs. But you're right, it's the same thing in D3. Once your team wins a conference championship 3 or 4 times, all your recruiting is undecided.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's an autopilot kind of game.
Pretty much, it is. Yeah. Now you're no longer a recruiter or a strategist. You're simply a game manager. You're making sure that lineup is set, everybody's where they're supposed to be, and you glance at your opponent and go, nothing special. I wait until it's set up.
Right around the third round is usually when I try to go like, okay, is there something I can do? And I'll do some weird stuff sometimes. Like if I run trips, I'll take my best receiver who's been my wide receiver 1 all year, and I'll move him to wide receiver 3 and change the playbook. And I'll do stuff like that maybe if he scouted me, he figures he has to cover wide receiver 1 the most, and he can try to set stuff up. And now I've moved him to 3. But, sometimes I don't even know if that helps. So that's the hardest part.
And, the big thing is it's only really good until somebody gets tired, and then everything gets shuffled based on who's coming back in the game. So you're looking at the play-by-play going, why is he in wide receiver 2?
Well, that's still the one thing I've never figured out, and maybe you know this or maybe nobody knows, but let's say you're running trips, and so you've got wide receiver 1, 2, and 3. When wide receiver 1 gets tired and goes out of the game, do 2 and 3 bump up, or does the sub come in at the 1 spot?
Yeah, that is what I have seen. So that is what I'm taking as gospel. Now, there may be some play-by-plays out there where I didn't look closely enough and missed it. But what I have seen, and I set my offense up just so I could see this or see how it transpired. I was running trips, ironically enough, and I saw that wide receiver 1 came out of the game because he was tired. He was being subbed by my 4th wide receiver on the depth chart.
Okay.
And as soon as my wide receiver 1 was back to his minimum level, he came back into the wide receiver 1 spot. Now, that was a couple games I saw that happen. Then I saw this happen. Same scenario. Wide receiver 1 goes out. He gets subbed. Wide receiver 2 goes out of the game. He gets subbed into the wide receiver 2 position. Wide receiver 1 is still not eligible to come back in the game, but his sub is now tired. So it's now like the 6th wide receiver is in the number 1 spot. Wide receiver 2 sub is out of the game because he's tired. Wide receiver 2 is still not ready. Wide receiver 1 took wide receiver's 2 spot.
Oh man, see, and that's
it made no sense.
Right,
but
right.
I think if it's 1 for 1, they go back into the same spot. I hadn't seen anybody move up in the order. I've seen them in a different spot because they came in a different part of the game.
Yeah, that stinks because again, if you're specializing, maybe one receiver 1 is your deep guy and one receiver 2 is a possession guy. And I've had seasons where I've used wide receiver 3 as just a jet sweep guy, where he just did outside run.
Right.
You know, so I had 1 was my deep guy, 2 was my medium guy, and then 3 just took handoffs, and I think I may have thrown some screens and stuff like that, like very short. Mm-hmm. But he was like a quick jitterbug kind of guy. And as soon as they start getting tired, now all of that gets screwed up, and my possession guy is now going deep, and
so you almost have to manage it based on the play selection, that you've got set up. Like we were talking about with the running backs. Mm-hmm. In that trip scenario, having a jet sweep guy, when I know I'm running wide receiver 3 on a run, I'll have my freshman wide receivers in 1 and 2.
Yeah.
My good wide receivers, I want them resting.
Right.
I've got my specialist running wide receiver in 3. I don't believe wide receivers block. I don't care what it says on their tape. They don't block worth a damn. On the line, downfield, or anywhere else. So I don't know.
I can tell you as a high school football coach, wide receivers don't block in real life either.
And I did the same with adult coaching. In the military and Air Force, we had our base teams and stuff. And I coached a base team for a while. And, man, you think teenagers in high school have egos, or even the guys in college. Those adults that are 30 years old, 28 years old, I ain't blocking. That's not what I'm doing. I'm catching the ball.
I love my wide receivers, but it's a group you got to handle with a little bit of delicacy.
There's a lot to be said for hyping a good block for wide receiver. I can do this. Now you've changed the entire layout of the team.
If you get one that can really get after it, it changes your life. It makes calling plays a lot easier.
Yep.
That's for sure.
Well, Rod, I have appreciated talking to you, brother. It's been good.
That's good talking to you too, man.
I plan to have a short show, but always love to have people come on and chit chat and fill up the hour. So that was great. And definitely wish you all the best of luck. Any parting words before we close this thing?
No, I just think if you're a new guy, just read as much as you can and find as many guys as you can to talk to, because, like I said, I'm 34 seasons into it, and I had a site mail tonight with a guy where I was like, oh, I never considered that perspective. That is a different way of recruiting. Mm-hmm. Maybe I should play around with that a little bit. I might not do it exactly as he said, but it's definitely something that I hadn't thought of. So, that to me, that's the greatness of this show and the boards and the people is just that nobody wants to see anybody quit. So if you do struggle with it, just reach out to somebody, because there's I'm sure I could help a D3 guy pretty easily. I've had some success there. So you learn enough tricks where you just.
I'll have Mike Myers. I'll have Mike Myers give you a call.
Woo! I think
MFN Myers.
If we both win tomorrow, we play each other in the 3rd round, and I've never played him.
Oh yeah, it
does look like a fun experience.
My first national championship was beating him, but that's been 20 real life years ago. It seems, eons ago. And love me some Mike Myers. He's bless his heart. He knows what he wants to do. He's got his goals set. He's going to come on the show one of these days here soon and share that with us. And he's at D3. And if you need to know anything about D3, you get a hold of him. he'll chit chat with you. But for the most part, like you said, anybody, will respond. And the worst case scenario is they tell you no, or if they don't respond, what the hell, But the worst thing they'll do is say, I don't know, or no, I'm not going to divulge that, or no, I'm not going to talk about it. So you talk to somebody else. You're not looking for secrets. You're just looking for advice on how to, where to put the check marks, where to put the I's, where to put the T's.
I think if you get on the boards, you can kind of suss out pretty quickly who's going to be able to help you and who won't. And guys will just straight up offer,
I encourage anybody to reach out and holler at me for advice, but they know that hopefully they know that whatever I tell them, they should do the opposite if they want to be successful based on.
I'm sure there's some things that you told me in some site mail exchanges that got me started and helped me out a little bit.
We're good.
Heck, even if it's just telling people to watch this show once in a while, you'll pick up something.
Yeah, we've got some pretty good guests that come on and drop a nugget here and there. So
yeah,
definitely learn something from these shows. Definitely. Well, we're going to wrap this one up, brother.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate you coming on, and again, pop in anytime because there's no special invite needed.
It's fascinating stuff.
All right, we'll talk to you another time.
Bye-bye.